We live with the constant illusion that people are watching us, judging our every step, and cataloging every mistake. But this is a false narrative we've built in our own minds. In truth, people are far too occupied with their own struggles, insecurities, and ambitions to care much about yours. This realization is not meant to make you feel insignificant, it is meant to liberate you. When you see that the spotlight you imagine doesn't really exist, you stop living like a prisoner of public opinion. The Stoics remind us, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. And one of the strongest opinions we must unlearn is that the world is obsessed with our actions. Your neighbor doesn't remember your embarrassing mistake from last week. Your coworker is not lying awake thinking about your small failure at work. Most people are concerned about their own reputations, their own battles, and their own future. Once you accept this, life opens up. You no longer freeze in hesitation, worried about what others will say. You stop holding back your words and your dreams. You realize that the imaginary critics in your head are just that, imaginary. No one is keeping score the way you think they are. And even if someone is, what power do they really hold over you? By letting go of the illusion of attention, you reclaim your energy. You stop performing and start living. You stop being self-conscious and start being self-aware. True freedom begins not when you conquer the opinions of others, but when you realize those opinions barely exist in the first place. The craving for approval is one of the heaviest chains you can wear. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek praise from parents, teachers, and peers. That desire follows us into adulthood, where it quietly dictates our choices. We pick careers, hobbies, and even relationships, not because they align with our inner values, but because they bring us applause. But the Stoic path is different. It teaches us that chasing approval is chasing shadows. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." The contradiction is painful. We neglect our inner voice just to satisfy an audience that barely notices us. When you accept that no one really cares, the chain of approval breaks. You no longer waste your life trying to live up to someone else's shifting expectations. You see that applause is temporary. The same crowd that cheers today may mock tomorrow. Their judgment is fickle, but your values can be eternal. The death of approval seeking does not make you careless. It makes you fearless. It allows you to act with integrity even when no one claps. It allows you to walk away from shallow validation and build a life grounded in your principles. You become unshakable because your worth is no longer tied to the unstable winds of opinion. Here lies the paradox. When you realize no one cares, the burden of responsibility shifts fully onto your shoulders. No one is coming to rescue you, no one is obligated to lift you up, and no one is responsible for your destiny. At first, this may sound harsh, but in Stoicism, this is where true freedom is found. Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because when you stop worrying about external judgment, you can focus entirely on what is within your control, your discipline, your choices, your willpower. Responsibility is not a curse, it is a gift. The moment you realize that no one cares whether you succeed or fail, you are free to build your life on your own terms. You stop waiting for applause before acting. You stop waiting for permission to pursue your goals. You become your own authority. Freedom is not doing whatever you feel like. It is owning your choices fully, without excuses. When you accept full responsibility, you no longer blame circumstances, people, or fate. You become the master of your life. And when no one cares, that mastery is yours to claim without distraction. Most of our suffering comes from the fear of judgment. We hesitate to try, to fail, or to express ourselves because we imagine the scorn of others. But once you accept that no one cares deeply, judgment loses its power. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The imagined ridicule is often worse than any real reaction we might face." People are not keeping track of your failures as much as you think. They are drowning in their own concerns. When you detach from judgment, you live boldly. You speak the truth without fear. You attempt things without the weight of perfectionism. You fall and you rise again without the crushing embarrassment of what will they say, because you know they won't say much at all. Detachment from judgment is not arrogance, it is clarity. You still listen to wise counsel, but you stop giving power to the gossip of the crowd. You recognize that their opinions are external, outside your control, and therefore irrelevant to your inner peace. When you are no longer chained by judgment, you act with courage. You live authentically, and authenticity, not approval, is the path to a meaningful life. When no one cares, you discover the need for something stronger than applause. You discover the need for inner strength. The Stoics called this virtue the unshakable foundation of wisdom, courage, justice, and discipline. If no one is watching, will you still do the right thing? If no one applauds, will you still pursue excellence? This is where character is forged. External validation may motivate you for a moment, but inner strength sustains you for a lifetime. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily reminders to himself, not to impress anyone, but to discipline his own mind. Epictetus endured slavery and poverty, relying only on his willpower to remain free in spirit. Seneca advised his students to live in accordance with nature, not in accordance with fashion. Each of them built a fortress within, independent of the world's care or indifference. When you build inner strength, you no longer fear the silence of others. You no longer crumble when applause fades. You rise because it is your nature to rise. You endure because it is your choice to endure. And you thrive, not because others care, but because you care enough to master yourself. At the core of Stoicism lies this ultimate truth: life is yours to live, not theirs to approve. When you accept that no one truly cares, you are finally free to live for yourself, not in selfishness, but in authenticity. Too many lives are wasted chasing recognition, trying to satisfy parents, friends, strangers, or an invisible audience. But the end of life comes quickly, and when it does, the opinions of others vanish into dust. What remains is whether you lived true to yourself. Marcus Aurelius asked himself, if you were to live another 1,000 years, or just 3, what difference would it make? What matters is whether you live rightly, here and now. The freedom of living for yourself is not about ignoring others. It is about prioritizing your values over their noise. You can love, help, and serve people better when you are not enslaved to their approval. You can stand firm in your decisions because you know they are aligned with your principles, not someone else's applause. This is the ultimate transformation. You stop living for an audience that doesn't care, and you start living with purpose. In that shift, everything changes. You become unshakable. You become free.